I'm Margaret Tapper. I'm the librarian for the Saddleback Area Historical Society. I'm going to kind of give an outline and a brief history of the Cook family. And then there are members of the Cook family here who are also going to talk about the Cook family. But the one who started it all was Andrew Jackson, A.J. Cook, who was born in Missouri. I have to look at the notes. I can't remember my birthday, so other people's birthdays, not either. He was born in Missouri on May 9th, 1847. When he was 2 years old, the family moved to Texas. And he grew up in Texas. When the Civil War started, he joined the Confederate Army at age 14. So I have a 12-year-old granddaughter. Think about this. A 14-year-old boy joined the Army. He was a decorated hero during the war, and when he was buried at the Santa Ana Cemetery, where there is a marker for the soldiers on both sides of the Union, both the Union Army and the Confederate Army. His wife was Mary Ann Barker Cook, and she was born in Texas. But they didn't meet each other in Texas. They met each other in Downey. So they had to come to California to meet. When he was 18, after the war, he came to California on a wagon train with his brother, Jeff, and they settled on Smith Mountain, which is today known as Palomar Mountain down in San Diego County, in North San Diego County. Mary Ann Barker was born on April 18th in 1852, and her family came to California when she was 9 years old, and they settled in the Downey area. So she moved to Downey. How he met her in Downey, they met and were married in Downey in 1871. And they had 10 children. And I'll list the children because I think it's fascinating. The names are fascinating. I won't go into the birth dates because I've got the birth dates. But I will tell you where they were born because these children weren't all born in Downey. John Henry Cook, and I'm going to say who they married because throughout the El Toro history, you'll recognize some of the pioneer family names. John Henry Cook, who married Annie Staples, was born in Downey. Susie Cook, who married Frank Salter, was born in Downey. James Andrew Cook was born in the Gospel Swamps. Now, those of you, the Gospel Swamps were what is today Fountain Valley. Mary Agnes Cook, who married William Borden, was born in the Gospel Swamps. Anna Elizabeth Cook, who married Delmar Woodward, was born in Arizona. There's no explanation of how they got from Downey to Arizona, but she was born in Arizona. Addie Mae Cook was born on Smith Mountain. And from Smith Mountain, they came to Ella Myrtle Cook, who was the first child born in Aliso Canyon. She married Milo B. Stevens. George Oliver Cook, who married Lottie, who died, there's no last name, who then married Evelyn Stone, was born on what they called the home place, Aliso Canyon. And Earl Jackson Cook, the Cook, also known as Jack Cook, who married Georgia Newell, was born on the home place, Aliso Canyon. So their family stretched over time. And I didn't mention Charles Walter Cook, who died of whooping cough at age 1, was born on the home place, Aliso Canyon. Now, with all these children, they needed a school. And the Trabuco School District was formed. And so the Trabuco School District was formed. They held school in bee houses, shacks, sheds. Finally, around 1881, a schoolhouse was built, and it was called the Aliso Schoolhouse, and we have pictures of it back there. And the children went. In the library, we have rosters of these children the Cook children, the Salter children, a whole bunch of different children, the Shaws, the Atkinsons, the Straws, the Lyons, the Hallecks, the Serranos, the Staples, the Salters, all went to the Aliso Canyon School. So you can see some of the married names are connected, and they met in school. The school closed in 1920, and at that point, the children from Aliso Canyon School went to El Toro schools. Now, the Cooks were farmers. They raised black-eyed beans, they raised barley for hay, and they were dryland farmers, which means they didn't depend on irrigation. The citrus farms that came later depended on water, outside water to grow. Dryland farming, it was called plant and pray for rain, because basically you depended on the weather for whether or not the crops grew. Clara Mason Fox talks about the history of how A.J. Cook came to the land. It says in 1884, he bought it from a man named Joseph Donovan, and he later partnered with a couple of other men, Mr. Victor and Mr. Gardner, to have their town surveyed, because that was a point at which Anaheim, Santa Ana, not Laguna Beach, but Anaheim and Santa Ana were becoming metropolises. I don't mean metropolis like Los Angeles, but they were becoming centers of commerce and civilization. There were courthouses, there were jails. Orange County became a county, and they actually had the land here in this area surveyed to determine whether or not they could become a city. Unfortunately, the big city formation had kind of dwindled off and come to an end. And so El Toro never really became a big metropolis like Santa Ana or Anaheim of the day. So of the Cook children, Earl Jackson Cook was the youngest, and he was the one who stayed on the farm and who started what is today Cook's Corner. And it was originally started as Asbury Shaw's honey extracting house. And the people who live, they reused it. Their honey, raising bees and honey in this area was a big deal. And it was a honey extracting house. One of the early schoolhouses was a honey extracting house. So this had been Asbury Shaw's honey extracting house, and it was located on the roadside of the creek. Now, the original building served as a food supply place for the ranchers and the miners in the area. They'd stop in and get a bite to eat. And when Prohibition ended in 1933, Jack added another building with six stools, bar stools, and a concrete slab for dancing. According to Earl's daughter, they would hold barbecues. Her mom would cook. She'd make gallons of it, she says, and Barbara says, Mom made huge pots of beans and gallons of potato salad. And I'm going to read some of her memories of the Cook Ranch. In 1946-47, the present building, and you can actually, on the aerial photograph, you can see the three parts. The actual building was moved was three parts, and it was moved from the Santa Ana Army Air Base, which is roughly where the Orange County Fairgrounds are today. There's a museum there, Heroes Hall, if you're interested. They have a lot of information about the Santa Ana Army Air Base, but they moved a mess hall here to become the buildings we now see at Cook's Corner. They've been modernized and maintained. I mean, they're not like the mess hall from the Army Air Base, but they were moved here in 1946 or 47. And it served as a gathering place for the people in the area, as well as for travelers who would come to Trabuco or to Majeska on the weekend. Earl Jack Cook died in 1960, and the property was leased to various people. May and George Stevens, Lloyd McCoy, and Paul Berger. Appropriate name for serving a place that serves hamburgers. It was sold in 1967 to Volker Stryker and Victor Villa. And that's when the biker bar era came in, because one of them owned a bike shop. And it started to draw in the biker crowd. And it was a pretty rough place.
The company name is Cheetah Accessories.
Okay. Oh, you see, and you're next. In addition to the recent tragedy, Cook's Corner's been threatened many times. From the late 1980s through the early 2000s, it was sold to various groups, various individuals who had great plans to develop it. There were plans to move it across the street and put in a shopping center. There were plans to put in a gas station. There were all kinds of great plans to expand and basically make it a commercial area, eliminating what's the treasure that we know is Cook's Corner. And I'll invite people to share their stories of Cook's Corner. My story of Cook's Corner, we moved here 30 years ago, and my daughters soon discovered Cook's Corner had spaghetti night, and they would go to spaghetti night. And then later on, when I had grandchildren, we would go for Taco Tuesday, because they had the best $2 tacos. We have a 1994 menu from Cook's Corner, so you can kind of see, has the menu changed in the last 30-some years. But, you know, every now and then these plans pop up to develop Cook's Corner. They haven't come to fruition, please, not yet. The county had a proposal to make Live Oak Canyon, Santiago Canyon Road, and El Toro Road a T-shape, traditional T intersection. Because if you drive that road, you know that when you curve from El Toro into Santiago Canyon, it's a curved intersection, and one curve goes to Live Oak Canyon, one curve goes to Santiago Canyon. Well, the county had a proposal in 1991. They were going to make that a T intersection. They didn't do it. Hopefully they never will. So that's kind of my outline. I thought to close, I would read, Barbara Cook Nunez was Earl Jack Cook's daughter. And I thought I would read a little bit of her memories, because we asked people 30, 40 years ago, we asked people to talk about their life in Old El Toro. And she says, we lived 6 miles from El Toro on Los Alisos Avenue, El Toro Road, near Cook's Corner. So my memories are mostly of school and catching the bus to Tustin High School. I can remember my mother going to the women's club meetings, El Toro Women's Club, at the hall. She's talking about the community hall that was down on El Toro Road that was torn down, and going to dances there. It was the center of entertainment, and the store was the everyday center. My grandfather rode horseback from Palomar Mountain to Los Alisos Canyon, where he bought property 1 mile south of Cook's Corner. He and my grandmother, Mary Barker Cook, reared 9 children. My father, Earl Jackson, was the youngest. They farmed hay and beans, raised hogs and cattle. My maiden aunt, Addie, and my father ran the ranch after my grandfather and grandmother died. When my father married my mother, my grandmother bought the property adjoining Cook's Corner for him. It's just a memory of growing up. She talks about growing up and playing in the fields and living in the country, which is a lifestyle that we don't have anymore. But this little corner property here is a picture of the countryside, and I'm going to invite Frank to come up and talk about
This place or Aliso Canyon?
Aliso Canyon.
Thank you. I learned a lot from that, but way to go. Oh, I gotta clip this on.
What about you? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, not there? Thank you. Very well done. Amazing. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be living on this property as a kid, 11 years old, helped mom and dad build that big house there. And knowing we had the little house, and just curiosity always settled in and flew in and out of my mind. Born and raised in El Toro. I still will claim that to no end. This is not Lake Forest to me. But obviously influences from Cook's Corner, being there at 5 years old with my dad, coming home, and my mom being pissed off because I smelled like cigarettes. So did my brother, but to be here today, as I call it, I'm the conservator of this property. It is my property, but I call it, it's my leash to take care of what mom and dad did from Mexico. They immigrated in '56. They came here, worked the orange groves in El Toro. I remember going to the El Toro Country Store, getting soda pops, going to the post office next door, going to the meat store, and that was the favorite place to go, is hang out on the verandas with all the farmers and so on and so forth. And then you would hear every once in a while, which is just right across the street, that big old bullhorn from the Volunteer Fire Department, Station 19, El Toro. Boo! I'm not doing that again. But it would go off, and we'd be in the farms, or we'd see the barley fields in Mission Viejo, and much of the properties that were being developed around here, and the orange groves. I'm born and raised in orange trees. But you see all the people like Lino Lopez. I think the Prothero family was involved. Any of the majors, Eusterasis, any of the major ranchers back in that day, we're part of the volunteer fire department, and it was an honor for them to be a part of that, to help out the community. That is something that you don't see nowadays today. Now we look at these people, law enforcement, fire department. I'm going to give it 2 seconds of politics. It's not respected anymore. That's a shame. So, but to be here today in front of you folks, and I'm just going off the whim because I'm not a facts and figures guy. I just take life as it hits me, and I try to make it for the next day and try to make it for the next year. Now I've got grandkids. Christine is my lady of 12 years or better. Hopefully she keeps me for the rest of her life, which would be another few. But she helped me decorate this place, and this is my little dream. Gentlemen, we can go in the bar later, or ladies, you can do that too. But either way, this is my home. Welcome. How to stay focused. What would you like to know? How I grew up here, the little cookhouse, and so on and so forth. You nailed it. Rob, you are here. Stand up, please. Back in the back. Okay, social media. You hate it or you like it. For me, it's really developed and opened up a lot of avenues of education, reconnection with friends, family, that people I don't even know. The Niablos family. Pat, he lives up the hill. Born and raised in El Toro, every school I went to, grade school, Los Lizos, and El Toro High School, first year there, first to graduate. But I've got lifelong friends that are 50 years plus, and so on and so forth. Where was I going with this? Cook's Corner. Well, the Cook's family house, being raised here, I started looking into it, but Rob pointed out, I'm on Facebook, I see shadows of old Saddleback. Oh, interesting. I like the canyons. You know, I call them canyon critters, but okay, so are we, but we're kind of on the outsides. But when I started seeing pictures of their whole history, because I remember when the Beardsleys had their hamburger stand, then it became the Hideout with Box, J.C. Box. My dad knew him very well. My dad was kind of infamous or famous, depending on what avenue you looked at him at. And but J.C. Box had the Hideout. And then it became Senor Lico's for a lot of years. Developed the name. And now it's Rose Canyon Cantina. Lovely place, great food, and so on and so forth. But those are little pockets of history that are still in these canyons that are surviving. And they make some improvements. Cook's Corner, of course. I've seen horses right through there with the cowboys over there. But seeing what Rob started putting together, and I called him, he was so excited. We'd come over at night, and he's taking pictures in front of the house and stuff like that. But what it did is solidified and confirmed to me Cook family house. Because I was always told it was built between 1890 and 1910. County records say 1926. Doug Westfall tells me in 1905. But he has a theory. That's when the county decided to get smart and start taxing these property owners and stuff. So be it. The house itself, and I did a renovation on it when I first got back on December 10th of 2010. I started on it, opened it up. My dad had it for a rental for a lot of years. It was a mess. It had outside plumbing, and some of the outside plumbing was plugged up. So the people that were living there just put a hose and ran it outside. It was junk all over the place and this and that. And I looked at the structure and I saw it was a craftsman or board and slat, I guess what Doug calls it, type of design house. I needed to bring it back, and I did. I redesigned it, tore down the little T-bar ceilings and whatnot, the panels, the things we used to throw pencils in as we were kids, but then find out they got asbestos, so everything gets ripped out. But anyways, tore that all out, and instead of the ceilings being this tall, they were 9 feet tall. That's a huge deal for somebody my size. But we did find a couple of areas where it was the original T&G redwood forest green varnish. We cleaned it up. I did reconfigure the inside walls because the bedroom was 9 feet wide and very narrow. There was a closet there. If you know me that I probably partake, and I have a lot of conversations, a lot of decisions, a lot of dreams, a lot of things come to fruition. After I have usually a conversation, if not with Christine, Bud, and Jack. Used to be Bud, now it's Pacifico. But that, we have these conversations, and I always said, dreams are where my future comes from, and that's where it should come from you. So we put this thing together in about 4 or 5 months, replumbed it, rewired it, and LED throughout the house, and it is a peach cake. Put brick around the bottom of it. There's some pictures floating around here. We found one in one of the books we have, circa 1965. But it was my pride and joy to rebuild it and put it back to what I considered close to the period correct structure. Now, we can walk around it a little bit later if we want to do that, but it is a genuine, through Rob Brown's information, I think it's a genuine Cook family home. I am proceeding to try to get this thing a designation of historical for a lot of reasons. There's just a lot of reasons that I think it should be preserved. As you were saying, the history, the jewels that we've had in these canyons, it may not be worldwide. Unfortunately, a few weeks back, we had a worldwide situation. That sucked. But they are, to me, being raised in Orange County. Traveled all over the country, been on my Harley. Where are you from? Orange County. Ooh. Yeah, so what? I'm a farm boy. Born and raised in El Toro, on an orange grove, milked the cow before. Oh, when we moved here, we had a milk cow, a couple of pig pens and stuff. The biggest thing I had, or the people that were on the bus when I got on, is I didn't step in a pile of cow shit before I got on the bus. It smelled. But with that being said, we have these jewels, we have these properties around here, we have these canyons that are still there, but they're disappearing very quickly.
Was it your first job at Cook? Tell me about that.
My first job was selling oranges at 12 years old on 2nd Street in Cherry when they were building Mission Viejo. There, 2nd Street came down like this. I'm gonna make this real short. Big walnut tree, we'd come and get these orange trees. Pheasant Creek was the best orange groves in Orange County. The packing plant would send special crews for those oranges because they were so special. But my dad we'd go there and seal a few bushels, and we'd wash them and package them. I sell them for $10 a thing. At 12 years old, that summer I made $600. Woohoo, I could buy my own Levi's now instead of going down to Kmart or whatever my mom would buy, because there were 6 of us in a family. But yeah, I did go to work at Cook's at 14 years old. My brother was 15. Lloyd McCoy, you mentioned his name. The family did lease it out to several properties, the Volcheks, and then there was Frank Luna, which my dad knew real well. And currently it's Costas. It used to be Pete and Costas, but now Costas is there. And he's done a pretty good job, and they've been pretty dynamic as far as keeping activities together.
And they modernized it.
They modernized it. They put an actual septic system that people didn't fall into on Saturday nights. The place used to be open till 2 o'clock in the morning, or when my dad was there, and some of the local cowboys were there. Let's go back to my job real quick. I'll tell you some other stories. Go in there Saturday morning. What are we doing, Lloyd? Well, we're going to clean this place up. My brother and I said, well, first job and stuff. See this ceiling? If you've ever been to Cook's Corner, it's a real long ceiling. Back in those days, 3 pool tables. They had bar service and tables all over the place. But you walk in there, and I couldn't see the back of this garage because of all the cigarette smoke. That was a time. Do that for about 30 to 40, 50 years. It's on the walls. Lloyd goes, well, you guys need to clean the ceiling up. I'm pretty white. After about 5 or 6 hours at doing it per day, it took us like 3 days, which never really came out. I could have been called a different origin, like African or really a Mexican, because I was brown from all that, and it just was bad. It was smelled. But that was our first job. Then we go through and clean up the morning. We come in and see the mayhem from Friday night to Saturday morning, Saturday night to Sunday morning, and we would walk in. We'd walk from here to Cooks, go to work. It's only half a mile. And come in, and we'd look down the creek, and my brother and I said, let's see how many motorcycles are down there. Oh, there's one. Oh, there's another one. Or just stuff that was down inside. The shenanigans from the night before. Clean up the bar. Sweep. Clean up the bar. I'm looking behind the bar, one of the coolers, because Lloyd McCoy in the morning would count his cash, and he would, somebody would come in and he'd push it away. Push it away. I'm doing the good little cleaner and cleaning up stuff, doing a thorough job, and I reach my hand down below. I pulled out a wad of bills about this big. Some of it was rotten. I don't know what the final count, but that was back in '74, and I think it was close to $2,500. Do you think that son of a gun, Lloyd McCoy, gave me $1 for finding it? No. He said, oh, thank you very much. Anyways, worked there, worked construction, and it was a lot of fun. But we were there several times with my dad. You work hard, you play harder. Work hard, you play harder. Sometimes playing harder is drinking harder. So either way, that's the kind of lifestyle. Cowboys were coming from the different cattle ranches, the barley fields, the clay miners. We had characters like Jim Southern, Gentleman of a Cowboy. Jim Beam, believe it or not, was his friend. And there was another guy, I forgot his name. Loved my dad. My dad was a little bit shorter than I am. They would have a hell of a time. Cook's Corner was open until 2 o'clock in the morning. Jukebox would be playing. Oh my gosh. Freddie Fender. All night long. Just round and round and round. But they would have a good time. They would talk about stories. They would talk about their days. And they would do all kinds of shenanigans. And sometimes they weren't done at 2 o'clock. The lawyer would look at him and go, lock it up when you're done. They'd be there till 4 in the morning sometimes. Can't do that nowadays. But I do remember there a couple of times where we were involved with a bar fight. Some kind of shenanigans happened. My dad was being pushed against the wall. Another guy was going in. And me and my brother were shooting pool. And I looked back and I said, uh-oh. So I'm running over. I flipped my pool cue around. And I'm 14 or 15. And I whacked this guy about 6 times on the back of the head. He dropped. I got pulled back. My brother comes along. And he's still got the skinny side out, hitting him. I'm sitting there, turn that thing around. But, you know, stuff like that. Horses running through the bar. That was funny. Living here gave me an opportunity to see life a whole lot different than what a lot of other people got to do. You could live in Santa Ana, you could live in Anaheim. Don't get me wrong, we're Mexican. But we never really lived that way. And I love the Mexican culture because they're so family-oriented. And gosh darn it, I would be bigger if I really had a Mexican, if my mom was still alive. Oh my gosh, greatest cook. They both passed away about 10 or 11 years ago. Bless their whole souls. Things like the gangs we were exposed to, El Toro Boys, San Clemente, played football, this and that. And next thing we have nice cars, which I still got them. My kids told me about 16 years ago, Dad, you're always working on hot rod cars. You don't have any of your own. Oops. But that's what happened here. But then you had things called gangs. You had people playing these stupid games about protecting the neighborhood. My neighborhood was Orange County. My neighborhood was the Western United States. My neighborhood was Southern California. I'm looking at my mom and dad, who had it. My dad has 5th grade education. He brings and raised 6 of us in Orange County. Pop my head, look around. 2 hours, I could be in a different country. I could be in the mountains like I've done before. Ski in the morning, surf in the afternoon, be at the river. Go to the ocean again. Do whatever you want. World-class destinations. And there's so many people that, kids that I grew up with, didn't see it that way. And that's unfortunate. Today, with the advent of media, social media and whatnot, like I said, great things because I found out a lot of information about people, this property we have here, and you guys are here as a result of it. So I can go on and on and on. I'm just amazed that I'm here, and I'm blessed to have this opportunity to share this with you. So, any questions? I have a question. No, I don't have an answer. I mean, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, I did ask. And that's by design. So when you guys leave here, you know, like Men in Black, I want to flash one of those little gizmo things, and you're not going to remember shit.
I remember the original owners of the home. They came to our house for Thanksgiving.
Original owners of which home?
Of the one down here, the Sanchez home.
I'm Frank Sanchez. Who did you know?
Then there's an older Mexican chap,
What's your name, sir?
Colin McNeil.
Colin McNeil.
And his kids came to our house for Halloween all the time. I never knew this was here.
You know, there's a shitload of Sanchez's all over the place. Where's Toad's family? Órale pues, ¿qué pasó? Aquí estamos.
I was going to invite up the other Sanchez to come up and share if they want to about Cook's Corner and being part of the Cook family.
Oh yeah, by the way, in the notices, I am not related to the Cook family, but I should be. God knows, my dad drank a lot of beer there. We paid several college educations if they did go to college. I don't know, we just did it. But Colin, I'd like to get more information. You live where now? Across
Valley Vista here on Deerfield, I'm the original owner of that home.
Valley Vista up here. So you live.
Vista is the street here, Deerfield,
Okay, so you live up on the top of the hill.
32 years.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk soon. My dad was Mel Sanchez, or gas pipe. His name was Belchor Gaspar Sanchez. Anybody Catholic here? Born on January 6th. What does that mean? All Kings Day.
3 Kings.
In the home down below, the one-bedroom home down in the cottage. That's still a house. People own that.
I can answer any question. The details came back to me about 13, 14 years ago. And I have renovated and I've done a lot of things. I basically lifted back up. Mom never did anything. She was a saint because she got real sick. Dad was getting older, and I have a couple of siblings. I'm not going to bash them, but there could have been a lot of things that could have been done to keep it up. When I came in like a tornado, and people realized what's going on here. I cleaned it all up. So anything you're talking about 30 years ago, that would be me. I was here. Born and raised here, helped build that house, renovated this and stuff. But thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Paltrow.
How did you acquire this property?
Mom and Dad.
Before that?
Mom and Dad bought it in 72.
72?
It was
Hold out on all the other development?
Well, it was like out in the middle of nowhere. We had the Marlowe sales property right next door, and this property went down to the old El Toro Road. So the bike trail that's there is the original El Toro Road, or Aliso Boulevard, or whatever they call it.
Aliso Road,
Los Alisos Road. So in 81, they realigned El Toro Road, because I know I had my 21st birthday party here. We had one hell of a party, but that's when they were building the road here. They took off the front acre and stuff. So I'm the second oldest, and my dad put together a trust and whatnot, and I assumed responsibility. And like I said earlier on, I call it my house because legally I pay the taxes, insurance, and everything else. And if somebody does something stupid, guess what? They're going to look at me. But it's my leash to take care of what Mom and Dad, considering living the American dream, coming from Mexico, another country, immigrating, finally becoming a citizen after being here for 50 years, but they did the right paperwork and everything. They were legal. They did it the right way. I consider it an honor that to maintain with the legacy that they left behind for me and my kids and stuff. So I inherited it. It's now in my trust.
When did your parents purchase the property?
72. I can give you cliff notes if you want. No, just kidding. They paid $50,000 for it back then. That was a lot of money. Just a little house, a little back building. There was a creek behind here. Marlowe had his house up there. The Machowskis had their house up on the hill, and they had a caretaker. They'd been there since 67. That property just sold, got redeveloped. Sad story, the caretakers were there for 27 years or more, or since 67. Raised 3 or 4 kids. Small little house. Doctor says, when we sell the property, we're going to buy you a house elsewhere. They passed away. Kids did nothing. Basically, they had to go live with their kids. Horrible story, but great people. And that was it, Old El Toro Road. It was 20 minutes to go to El Toro, to the freeway and stuff. So, and that bike trail, I learned how to drive on. Yes, sir.
What's the acreage
It's about 2.5. Yeah, 2.5 acres, and it looks bigger. My design was to clean it all up. I took 9 roll-off dumpsters of stuff out of here, and probably one, maybe 1.5 was accountable to maybe some remodeling or rebuilding or construction. There was just a lot of, it was in disarray and stuff. This building for my car I built about 10 years ago. County didn't like it at first, but they didn't make me tear it down, so it's been certified and passed and stuff. That building right there, the bar, is my dad's old workshop. So where I'm standing would be a tractor shed that stuck out. Anybody from the old ranches will know what's a tractor shed. Flat top buildings, all the implements go under there. You store all your stuff that you do. Because we were on Orange Grove, so we had to maintain. My dad was in charge of about 1,500 acres for the Hall Ranches at one time. A ranch in Orange Grove, Grapefruit Groves in Coachella, Indio. Santa Ana off of 4th Street, which is now Golden Circle. And then here in El Toro off of what would be at the end of Cherry. If you're going back down El Toro Road just before you hit that curve, which they realigned, it used to be real deadly. Saddleback Park was up there, crazy weekends. But there's a cañada to the right, and there's a street goes to the left. It's called Aliso Park. If you drop down there, I think there's still the eucalyptus tree that we lived on. Once we were growing up, we lived there till I was 11 years old. Fort House, tree fort, swing, the whole 9 yards. 2-story barn, breezeway, tractor shed, so on and so forth. There's some corrugated steel underneath there, and I've got another building that when in 72 the Dean brothers had bought the property because now the land was more valuable than the oranges. Go figure. Orange County, well, you know what? I've got 11 orange trees down there. I'm down to 9. They're 50 years old, and they're producing. That's the last of the orange trees that I know of in this area. But you used to drive down the roads, go down the new freeway, 5 freeway. Oh, there's Disneyland. You could see it. But you smell the orange blossoms and stuff, and you smell it. You don't see that now. But, yeah, 72, they sold it. Took a lot of corrugated steel out of there. Grandpa built the shelves back there, but this is my dad's workshop. Small pad out there, tractor shed, and this was the center where he did running the orange groves to landscaping. I think I helped my dad landscape the first probably 80% of the homes that were built in 64, 5 through 71, Mission Viejo and El Toro, and Bobcat truck and everything else. So a lot of history in there.
A lot of history, huh?
Yes, it's crazy. I can keep going. You want me to stop?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I didn't mean it that way. No, I didn't mean it that. Is there anybody else who wants to share stories of being part of the Cook family or about Cook's Corner? I have a Cook's Corner. I have a Cook's Corner story. And we have their records. I have a Cook's Corner.
Can I say something real quick, and I'm going to stop, I promise. An honor to be amongst so many people that have been here. Bill, I met you earlier, Mr. Harris, right? So you're the first one who told me about the bee stuff, and she talked about it today. Amazing, didn't know that. But I am privileged and honored to be in front of so many people that have longer history. I'm not pioneer family. I'm just from 1960 all the way up. Don't do the math.
Great place for us to meet.
Yes.
So is there anyone else who wants to share a Cook story? I have a Cook story that I gleaned from reading through the Cook family notes. Apparently, Jack Cook wanted some more land, and one of the Serranos that he had gone to school with was a regular at the bar. And he made a deal with this guy. And I'm not going to name the Serrano because that's sort of pointing fingers, I think. He made a deal. He could come and have free drinks every night, and when he got to 160 free drinks, Jack Cook got the 160 acres. And that was one of the family stories that I came across. I thought, that's pretty good dealing, because he basically said, I'll let you drink all you want on your way home from work, because the Serranos, after they lost the land grant, some of them moved up here into the canyon area. But he said, I'll make you a deal. You can have free drinks, and when we get to 160 nights of free drinks, I get the land. And that's That's how Earl Jackson, or Jack Cook, got some of the Cook land that had not belonged to his father before that. Now, before we wrap, I don't want to wrap it up too soon, but is there anyone else who wants to share a little bit about Cook's Corner and or the Cook family? Come on up.
Come on up.
Or as they say on Price is Right, come on down.
My name is Bob Riley. My real last name should be Sprouse. My great-uncle owned Cook's Corner back in 1884. He came out here, got a homestead in 1884. Whoops, sorry. And he passed away in 1890. He's over here in Santa Ana. And his son took the property, and I think he sold some of it to Cook, sold some of it to Shea. Shea was one of their family members. Thomas came out here to California, to LA, along with Cook, and it was Los Nitos when they came out here. And that was I think they called it the Texas Acres, is what they called that area at the time. And he owned 104 acres. He owned 3, 4, and 5. This should be 6 and 7 coming down this side of the road, was Cook. And Cook bought it, I believe, about 1895 or something like that. And they bought a house down in Santa Ana. They got tired of playing up here. But the original Thomas was a beekeeper. And I guess he did well on that. But he just died off in 1890. But
No, it's the fact that we got that kind of history going on and the lineage, and we got people here that are directly connected to it. I'd love to talk to actual original, well, I think we do have an original family. Somebody has taken a picture or something like that to verify, but an original Cook family member that was,
they were from Missouri.
Yeah, so.
And he was in the Texas, one of the regiments in Texas, same one my great-great-uncle was in. And I assume they came out as buddies, and that's where they kind of got together. That's pretty much it, but I haven't found out where they are in northern Orange County. I know a lot of them moved up to Santa Fe, Julian, and some in Tustin. So that's pretty much it. So they've been back here all the way.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Good information.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes. Bill, I'll walk back.
Excuse me a little bit. At this age, I decided to break my neck a couple of years ago. It's never straightened out. It looks like I've been hit by the Santa Fe, but you ought to see that engine. It's in bad shape. Not really.
Just hold it up.
I'm familiar with the Cook family in a roundabout way. I'm about third generation. The name is Harris, Bill Harris. If you'll go from Cook's Corner up the grade and over the top to Tabuco, the name of that grade today is the Harris grade. My grandfather down at the base, and you can't see it anymore because it's so overgrown. I was by there today, and the gate, you can't even find out where it's at. It was a small orange grove in there. And I assume the house is still there. I've seen some aerial photos where some vandalism have taken place and et cetera. I had told several people that I have reservations about coming back down here anymore because it breaks my heart to see the growth and to see things that when I was a boy, that they weren't that way, even down at the old El Toro store, like you mentioned, all old Cy and, can't think of the other boy's name. Al, Cy and Al would be there every evening having a beer out on that bench and watching the cars go by. They both worked for the Whiting Company and the Eusterises, Johnny and Joe. But my grandfather came to the Trabuco Canyon, and I was interested in what you said about the Cooks. And in Texas, And so I'm born there, and then they came out. I mentioned to you before, and I did about it's been about 3 years ago. It took me 5 years to do it. Put together a complete Harris family. I got back as far as 1800, and I couldn't find any more after that. 1826, my great-grandfather was born in St. Louis. But as they came out here and they went to Texas and then they came to Campo, which is South San Diego County, and then came here. And my grandfather, the reason he ended up here, the other half of our family is the Shaw family, which the Shaws had a place at above the mesa to the north of the Robinson Ranch, north of Louis Robinson's place. And Jim Shaw came in there with Julia. I've got an account still handwritten on the back of an old calendar that Julia wrote in crossing the plains and the problems they had in the Indians, and they lost most of the stock just before they got into Tularosa, New Mexico. They stayed one night, and the Indians took most of the stock, and that's when it would be my great-grandfather and great-grandmother. He had a brother coming out with him, and he gave him his oxen to come the rest of the way. And my grandfather ended up being born in Tularosa, New Mexico, and he in 1868. And then they came on to Campo. But he came here, mainly the Shaws ended up in Downey, or Santa Fe Springs, is called Little Lake at that time. Some of the history that I drum up on Ancestry says that they were from Little Lake in Inyo County, which there is a Little Lake there. It's not true. And Ancestry.com is a neat way to go, but don't believe everything you see there, because there's some stuff that doesn't quite match. I only have one sister, but I find out in Ancestry.com I got a sister in Fresno. Was born before my parents were married. I'm going, somebody's holding out something here on me, but he came, my grandfather, the Harris family and the Shaw family were all in that Little Lake Gospel Swamp area. And then the Shaws decided to move to up here above on the mesa. And at that point, my grandfather was very smitten with a Shaw girl, and Lucy Shaw, and he couldn't quite stay away, so he would take what was part of the streetcar and the railroad and make it as far as about Santa Ana, and then he'd rent a buggy and he'd come out here to visit her. And in 1895, he went to the bottom of the Tabuco Canyon and bought a homestead off of a fellow that was there, and found out a year or so later the homestead was no good, that the guy had never proved up on it. And the tin mining company that was in there basically said the land is ours. And you know, you talk about honey, and that gets into another portion of my family. In the earlier years, my grandfather had about 1,000 hives of bees in the upper Trabuco and in this area, and later on, even my dad and I had 2,500 hives here on the Whiting Ranch, down on the Mission Viejo, on up clay mines. We had a little bit everywhere around here. But he came and homesteaded it and found out it wasn't any good. And you're all familiar with a guy named Holy Jim? Holy Jim Canyon? Well, Holy Jim, and I never could figure this out, bought the place, or gave my grandfather money for the place that really wasn't his and wasn't going to end up his. And I never could find out how that money went back and forth. But they left over there. In the meantime, my grandfather had married Lucy Shaw, and they came here to right above Cook's Corner, where makes a curve. I know the road straightened out a lot. And they bought that from Mrs. Culp. It was 160 acres there. And as I remember, I think I'm right, $1,000 for the 160 acres in the house that was there, which they added on to. And then they eventually bought, that included 160 acres that followed the road to the top of the hill and went back, and then came clear on back down. There's 2 houses built must have been about the 60s, that are in the right-hand side, right as you leave Cook's Corner. Those were the pieces of property that my two uncles had when they divided everything up. And they sold that to those people there, and they built a home. But eventually, my grandfather bought a section of ground on the far side, which was, at the time, I believe the Rasmussens bought it out of Santa Ana. Rasmussens, as I understand it, were into cowboy gear, selling saddles, this sort of stuff in Santa Ana. Rasmussen sold it to a fellow by the name of Alvin Spears. And it was the Spears Ranch for a long time. And then it went to Dr. Edgar, a dentist, and then he basically sold it all to a investment company out of Texas to build in there. Well, my wife and I ended up with the last 2.5 acres, 3 acres, which we held on till in about 1999. And I didn't realize it, but when the road widened and it went through the center of the barn, and maybe you might even, the people have been around here for a while, there used to be a great big warehouse, which was the barn where they kept all the stock. But my dad had plastered it and fixed it up, and that was our bee warehouse. Well, when the road widened, it went right through the center of it in 1963. So my dad went to Fresno with his bee operation, and we ended up with all the 3 little pieces. There's some 1-acre pieces in there that are all divided, if anybody was ever interested in get the guys out of Texas to do something. But we sold that. I remember so much about Cook's Corner because 1948 was about when those buildings were moved in there? 46. And I would have started remembering at that point. I was never, my dad basically, he was a teacher. First teaching job he had was the Trabuco Schoolhouse, single-room schoolhouse. Still got a picture of his students out there. There must have been 9 of them, 10, different grades. He taught there, and he left there and went to El Toro School. And he taught at El Toro School for 3 or 4 years, I believe. Many of the families here had younger people that, well, younger, they're older than I am, that he taught in school. And the Glass Ranch, familiar with people down at the Glass Ranch, Johnny Glass, which is now in Riverside. Johnny Glass rented them a one-room home they had there. My mom and dad in 1934, when they got married, lived there on Johnny Glass's place for a while. I had the privilege the other day, the Glass family, which originally was Juan Glass, they came from the Basque country to run sheep in this country. And then it was their son John Glass. And there's been every boy that has ever come into that family is named John Glass. So there's a bunch of them, it's hard to keep them. I had an opportunity to have coffee with the John Glass now that's in Riverside. They have most all of their orange groves up there. They have a big operation in Coachella Valley and a big operation at Porterville. And sitting at the Riverside Airport the other day, about a 10-passenger Cessna jet comes in there and makes some noise, whips around, gets some fuel. With the guys I was with, I said, I wonder who that belongs to. Oh, that's Glass's jet. They've come from herding sheep in El Toro to having their own private jet and a bunch of holdings everywhere. Heck of a nice guy. But as far as I get back to Cook's Corner, I remember pretty much when that building was put there, as young as I was, my dad really didn't ever want me to kind of fraternize the place very much because, as Frank mentions, a few of the boys would have a few beers every day. But I remember Jack Cook very definitely. When I was going through this history on putting together the family, I came across a fairly large picture, and I couldn't identify the woman. Come to find out, it was Addie Cook. And my dad, I guess, knew Addie pretty well. You mentioned when I talked to, no, it was Marion, that the Moultons have a historical museum now. And Oh, okay. Very, very anxious to come down and see that. I remember being a young kid, and my dad was very sweet on one of the moltons. And I think that was probably right. But I remember him saying that quite a bit of the time, and later on I thought to myself, what happened to you, Dad? Come on, look what they got. You know, but not disappointed in my mom at all. But he and his two brothers grew up there, were born at the house in my dad was, his older brother's 1906, he was 1908, and the younger brother, Robert, was 1912, was born. And they all grew up there. When you're going up the grade, there's kind of a mountain there on your left, with a little high spot. It's flat up on top of that. I was over there a lot of times when I was a kid. And Dad said, we used to always plant this in corn. He said, Dad we plant corn every year. I said, well, does corn ever grow? No water up there. And he says, no, corn never really grew worth a darn. And he said, one year, me and my older brother, we're up there working, and he said, Dad, why do we put this corn in here all the time? It never grows. Nothing ever happens. Yeah, but he said, sure kept you out of trouble, didn't it? But it really didn't, because I've heard of some stories that they were a little mischievous in this canyon. You mentioned the Aliso schoolhouse. Right over the top of that little rise on the right-hand side as you drop down, there's a little flat spot right next to the creek. That's where it sat, right there. It was in my uncles and my two uncles, my dad went to school there. My grandfather was a school board member there, too. But there's a lot of, I never really realized that the Cooks owned this piece of property here. Never did all the time I've been here. I always thought they had the house there behind just above where the restaurant is, or the bar, and that was where I always had seen Jack cook, and so I didn't really realize that they were there. But there is so much history and good memory in this canyon that it's been a lot of fun for me. Like I say, I get a little, I want to remember like it was, but you can't go backwards, you got to go forward. So, you had a question?
Yes, up near the top of the grade is a place called Vulture Crags. Do you have any stories about that?
I've heard my dad speak of it a lot, but I never went into Vulture's Crag. I don't know where that property, as you go up to the top of the hill, and there was a road that went back on the north side. I can't think of the guy's name that had that in there, but there's a piece of property in there, it's fair sized, and I've been on Saddleback and all over and back up in the Tubuco Canyon, but and all over this country down here with looking for bee locations and having bees, and Lord knows since I was about 8, 9 years old. I was telling my wife the other day, everybody says, well, when you were that young, did you ever get stung? Well, yeah. And so, didn't it bother you? And I said, well, as I got older and working the bees all the time, that bee stings don't bother you until you get about 90, 100 of them. And then your hand starts to get a little itchy and kind of swollen up. It bothers you a little bit. But other than that, we had a lot of fun at it. And times have changed. When you're speaking of beehives and oranges, and I have a lot of concern because there aren't any beehives. And we used to take 2,000 hives from this area to Fresno County every year for 3 months worth of alfalfa pollination. We got $5 a hive rental for 3 months. Big deal. I was talking to some fellows the other day. They basically haul them in out of Iowa, South Dakota. They're getting between $150 to $200 per hive for 3 months. And I'm going, wow, another one of these inflation type deals that we face today. That Cook's Corner is a place that'll always be there. And we had a lot of fun at the whole thing in this canyon. And I have some more pictures and stuff for you too that we're going to gather up. I was looking at a picture of my grandfather on the top of the Harris grade with an 8-horse team pulling 2 wagons full of grain sacks to go down to the grain warehouse in El Toro. I've got another picture that came up, and on the back of it I was looking, and it was the first mobile thrashing machine that worked up on the mesa, because that's where all the barley was grown, was on the mesa. And it showed, on the back of the picture, my dad written, 20 mule team pulling the thrashing machine. Baloney. I don't, so I got the magnifying glass and I started counting them all. There was 20, and my grandfather had the reins of those things running those 20 mules. And, I can remember my dad saying when they had stationary thrashing machines, he worked up there as what they call a forker. That's getting it off of the wagons and stacking it up on the pile, and then they throw it in the thrashing machine. But there's a lot of history around here. If I've got, like I say, some more stuff for you that in our family we've got I'm very fortunate to have a lot of it, but some of our siblings, or I should say my kids, well, Dad, if you'd put it all on a CD disc, we'd be happy to have one of them. Who wants to take the originals? The originals are all of the pictures that are there, the stuff that counts. Yeah, yeah, Frank.
I love pictures. Now I know about Harris Grade.
It's some of the pictures. The one about the lion. My grandfather's supposedly one of the last cougars or mountain lions. Came in there at the ranch and started harassing the chickens and the dogs. Well, nowadays I got to watch out how I say this because, well, he shot it. It was a nuisance. And it's a picture in the Santa Ana Register of it hanging there he took that one. One of the supposed last grizzly bear that was in the Santa Ana Mountains up above Tabuco, Ed Atkinson, which was a very good friend of my grandfather's, they had beehives up the Tabuco. And the bears come in and tear them up, get the honey. And they're pretty smart bears. As he said, they'd grab a whole hive and take it a little ways out of the apiary and then just beat the heck out of it to get the honey. So they had enough of it, they said, and they set a trap for him. And in fact, the trap is still at Bowers Museum in downtown Santa Ana. But they set this trap, and my grandfather, he broke a wagon wheel going over there when they were going after it. But Ed Atkinson and, yeah, there goes my memory again. One of the other boys went up there, they followed that bear for a long ways. You don't necessarily, when you trap animals, you don't put down a stake and hold them because they'll chew the leg off to get out of the trap. But they finally found the bear, and actually they sent it to the Natural History Society, I think, of the United States to see if it was a grizzly, and it was. But there was 2 or 3 old bears up there that a couple of them didn't have any teeth because they bite in too many whatever's eating rocks. But the bears were quite prolific around here. I don't know, a lot of the stuff I could go through, but it was fun. And anytime I can be of any help to anybody, we'll give a shout. I still got a lot of stuff, and I'd enjoy go down and take a look and see what you got.
Well, I'm certain she would mind learning more about what you have as well.
And conducting a long-format interview called Oral History. It'd be my honor.
Okay.
And you should take her up on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Our beekeeper, and you know, they're gone now, but there were 6 beehives off of Santiago Canyon Road up until about a year ago. So anybody else wants to? If not, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing your stories. It's by sharing the stories we keep it alive. It's by sharing the stories we keep it going. And I'm going to hand this over to Rita, our Vice President, who will say a few words about the upcoming events.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming. My name is Rita Propersian. I am Vice President of the Saddleback Area Historical Society, and Margaret, thank you. She is our research specialist. She has stories to tell, and nobody can tell them better. So thank you very much. We do... We'd like to thank Frank for hosting and telling us his stories and sharing this beautiful place. And he made an invitation to see the beautiful little house that he has restored. Please see it. It is a gem. You'd really enjoy that. We have some refreshments. Take a look next door. And that would be great. Oh, that way. So, yeah, that's the bar. Right. But we really appreciate the fact that you all came. And Jennifer, thank you for joining us today. Yes, we look forward to working with the Moulton Museum, and we also would like to invite you, if you are not members, to please go back, and Marion in the back would be more than happy to take your name, give you an app. We have some wonderful archival information. If anyone is interested, please contact the Society or Margaret. So listen, again, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
I have one comment to make. There's a lot of love going on here for the canyon. Mr. Harris, you are a jewel. Speaking to you is better than opening up a history book, especially if you lived it. I'm a newbie with this area. However, it has come across my attention. There is a project that was called Saddleback Acres or Saddleback Meadows. It was put together maybe 15, 20 years ago. It did not come through because of geologicals. It's right next to the St. Michael's, which St. Michael's is another project that this Double R Ranch. Do a little research, folks. They're in our neighborhood. Double R Ranch is, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I have some good suspicions. However, I got to notice that Saddleback Meadows or whatever, 181 homes are scheduled to be constructed here pretty soon. They are going to move through with the project. So that's going to take this canyon and further dilute it, make it disappear, and so on and so forth. I don't know what we can do as a society. I know it's going to impact me quite a bit more because now I'm going to have to drive a Sherman tank, stop the road so she can go to work because it's just going to get so crowded. But yeah, just a little tidbit. Let's do some research. Thank you very much. What great information. And yes, the bar is open. Never mind. No, just kidding. Welcome to my place. As far as the little house goes, there is no inside tours. I do have a tenant in there out of respect. But if you don't want to do a little walk around, I'd be happy to go down there. It's pretty cool. I really put my heart and soul into that place.